Good to have you with us tonight, folks. Thanks for watching. Congressman Paul Ryan of Wisconsin has started a firestorm, and some Democrats are ready to politically go to war with him. Congressman Jim McDermott made this explosive comment on my radio show today.
The president has bent over backwards, and I mean bent over backwards in trying to work with these people. And they simply are not going to help him solve the problems of this country. And I think the time has come to call him out and go to war with him. I mean, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. That's not my style politically. But there is just no question that they have taken advantage of the president's real attempt to be conciliatory and work together and all of that. All they've done is taken advantage of him.
McDermott told me hundreds of other members are more than frustrated about the way Republicans are sabotaging this president. McDermott thinks the president should just quit trying to work with these jokers, the Republicans, and just go into full campaign mode. Let's roll.
And I just think he ought to stop it and say, come on, it's over, game's over, we're going somewhere else, and really start down the road for the next election.
I really like that. McDermott is clearly sick of Republicans pushing garbage like this.
Instead of appealing to the hope and optimism that were the hallmarks to his first campaign, he has launched his second campaign by preying on the emotions of fear, envy, and resentment. This has the potential to be just as damaging as his misguided policies. Sowing social unrest and class resentment makes America weaker, not stronger.
Republicans, if I remember, and President Obama have referred to Congressman Paul Ryan as a serious economic policy thinker. The speech Ryan gave at the far right-wing Heritage Foundation was anything but serious. Ryan's speech was nothing more than a cheap political hit job on the president, who has extended olive branch after olive branch to the opposing party. President Obama isn't playing patsy anymore. Last night, the president warned Democrats what a Republican future looks like.
The one thing that we absolutely know for sure is that if we don't work even harder than we did in 2008, then we're going to have a government that tells the American people you are on your own. If you get sick, you're on your own. If you can't afford college, you're on your own. If you don't like that some corporation is polluting your air or the air that your child breathes, then you're on your own.
The president is spot on. Paul Ryan wanted to turn Medicare into a voucher system. Republicans want to privatize Social Security, public schools, fire departments, and every other institution Americans fought and died to preserve. President Obama wants the top 0.02% to pay more to help create or save 400,000 jobs. Ryan claims it won't work.
This notion that we should tax and redistribute toward prosperity has been tried so many times in so many different countries, and it just doesn't work. We should be focused not on worrying about wealthy people. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about people who are not wealthy, who want to get up, make something of themselves, rise, succeed, create businesses, go to work, and have a life that they want.
Did he say he's not worried about the wealthy? Oh, yes, he is. That's all they do is protect the wealthy. Ryan's theory isn't based in reality. It's a fact. President Obama's economic policies have led this country to 19 straight months of private sector job growth. Here's another fact. President Obama's economic policies have led America to 9 straight quarters of GDP growth. And it is a fact the stock market was under 8,000 points on President Bush's last day in office. And it's a fact the stock market closed over 12,200 points today. If you're in the market, you got to feel good about that, even you righties. The only reason these numbers are not higher is because Paul Ryan and the Republicans have done everything to kill the economy and sink the president's reelection effort. It's not radical for Democrats to think President Obama should quit trying to work with these folks and going into the campaign mode. Republicans don't care about governing and are always in the campaign mode. Paul Ryan needs to take a look in the mirror. People are in the streets in this country because Republicans have forced discontent. Republicans' depraved indifference to the middle class in America is selfish, undoubtedly, and it is a national shame. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think. Tonight's question, which party is dividing the country? Text A for Republicans, text B for Democrats. 622-639 is the number, and our blog is ed.msnbc.com. Results coming up later on in the show. Joining me now is Virginia Congressman Jim Moran. Congressman, good to have you with us tonight.
Be with you.
I was somewhat surprised when Jim McDermott, your colleague and friend, said that to me today on the radio, that there are some in the Congress that want the president to say, okay, I've done all I can do. Time now to turn to the election. Are you one of those Democrats?
No, I'm not. And President Obama is not going to give up. He's going to continue to fight. But it's pretty clear that many in the Republican leadership, I think most, would rather see President Obama fail than this country succeed right now. They feel that the long-term objective is to gain control. And when you're talking about Paul Ryan, you know, he will tell you he's an acolyte at the altar of Ayn Rand. She was a cult figure in the 1960s who preached the virtue of selfishness, basically a winner-take-all economy. And, of course, that's what we have today, when the 400 richest families in America have as much wealth as the poorest 150 million Americans. 400 versus 150 million.
Yeah.
But they would tell you that's the way it ought to be. That's the natural course of things. You know, in the first year of the recession, those 400 wealthiest families made $300 billion more, while the average American lost a quarter of their retirement savings. But that's okay with them, because the wealthy, the winners in our society are doing very well, and so they think that their philosophy is working. But that's not what America's all about. They're willing to cut the very programs that provide upward mobility for Americans. You know, you start with child nutrition, Head Start, public education, higher education, giving housing subsidies for low-income families to live in middle-income neighborhoods. Those are all the ways of upward mobility.
Well, Congressman,
but they're cutting all those programs.
They certainly do want to cut them, and they've proven that, and they don't want to work with this president at all. So the suggestion is that the president should go into the campaign mode. Now, the Republicans have said no to 400,000 jobs. Now, we need a hell of a lot more than 400,000 jobs, but this would be a start. And the president wants 0.2% of Americans would be affected by this. If they're not going to go along with that, what are they going to go along with? Probably nothing. Why not go into the campaign mode?
Because we care about this country. We're not in it to win campaigns. We're in it to make a positive difference in the lives of Americans. That's why Barack Obama is president. I'm convinced of that. That's why the majority, at least of my Democratic colleagues, continue to fight every day.
So can the president accomplish anything with John Boehner when he has the gavel in his hands?
You know, Ed, this is still a democracy. If your viewers and other viewers will say, look, we're not going to vote for you if you don't do the right thing. We're talking about 400,000 jobs, but 280,000 of those jobs are teachers. Imagine what happens when you have to have 60 students per teacher in a classroom. Nobody's going to get educated, and that's the next work. That's our future workforce. We're killing off the seed that will give us strength in the future.
And you think the American people will figure that out in the next year? I think they will, too, but I think they're awfully frustrated and beyond. Congressman, great to have you with us tonight. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Now let's turn to Katrina Vanden Heuvel, editor and publisher of The Nation magazine. What do you think about this issue? Jim Moran telling, or Jim McDermott telling me earlier today that there are members of the Congress that think, you know, just turn to the campaign. Let's just go. You're not going to get anything out of these Republicans.
Well, I think the president needs to turn to the economy, to jobs, to standing with the majority of Americans in this country, Ed, who want investment and job creation, who want to see higher taxes on the wealthy, who want to see an end to the acceleration of inequality and an end to the downward mobility. I mean, Paul Ryan has exposed himself as a first-rate demagogue and a class warrior for the wealthy. But he certainly has lousy timing. He comes out the day of the Congressional Budget Office, a nonpartisan office, which reveals the acceleration of inequality over the past quarter century. And what does he call for? A redistribution upwards to the wealthiest, a regressive, twisted tax code that would help the very wealthiest, and talking about sowing envy and resentment. I mean, what's sowing envy and resentment in this country are the harsh economic realities.
Yeah. I want you to respond to what Congressman Ryan said on CNBC this morning. Here it is.
The year before the election is when you get all the legislating done. You get the policies passed. They started the election a long time ago. And so what I would say, sowing social unrest and class resentment, that just makes America weaker, not stronger. Pitting people against each other, preying on emotions of fear and envy, that is not what we do in America. It's antithetical to the American idea of upward mobility.
Has the president said anything to feed social unrest in this country?
He has not. What he has tried to do, and Democrats have tried to do, have taken modest steps in these last weeks and months to slow the troubling trends of inequality. Paul Ryan is a very insidious person. But Ed, one thing I think people need to know is he is the darling of the elite, the establishment in Washington, D.C. My colleague Ari Berman wrote a cover story for The Nation last week called How the Austerity Class Rules Washington. And we are seeing an austerity class of pundits and politicians and think tanks who have manufactured a crisis in this country of debt and deficits when the real crisis is the jobs crisis. And they treat this guy, Congressman, as a serious man. They have defined courage downwards by saying this man is courageous. To what? To gut Social Security, Medicare, and programs that have brought security and dignity to millions of Americans. He's on the wrong side of history.
December 23rd is a big date with this super committee. Agreement's got to be made.
Absolutely.
The Democrats have put $1.3 trillion worth of cuts on the table in the next decade. They want a little bit more revenue from the wealthiest. The Republicans say no. Where's this all going to end up? And how aggressive should the Democrats push for cuts?
You know, Ed, I hate to say it, but I hope this super committee ends in failure, because I think the real failure is if it comes out with real cuts and programs people need in this country that will hurt people. I mean, I think we lose sight of the fact that when someone like Paul Ryan talks about fiscal responsibility, it means balancing the budgets on the backs of working people in the middle class. Now, the Democrats have to step up their game. The Congressional Progressive Caucus, with their people's budget, is the only common sense budget in my view. And the president, you know, I think he should look at the wind behind his back. You know, who's he going to stand with? He has so much support. The mood in this country, it's going to be tough, but it's shifting.
I want to ask you about that, because this story right here, with the way he's coming out, claiming that the president is sowing the seeds of social unrest, all the obstruction that they've been through, and I know you follow this. What's this going to do to the vote in Ohio? What's this going to do to the recall of Walker in Wisconsin? I mean, I think it's a domino effect. Your thoughts?
I mean, I hope it is. I mean, one thing that is clear is the force of money unleashed by the Citizens United decision, which allowed corporate money to flow, and we've seen it in Ohio. But there is a sense in this country, finally, of fairness, of taking back a government that stands for people and isn't rigged against their interests. So I think there could be a domino effect, and it's not just Occupy Wall Street. It's the supercharging of what is going on in this country, the sense, finally, of accountability and holding Wall Street accountable and holding financial institutions and multinational corporations accountable and letting people finally have a fair shake.
We haven't heard a congressman talk about a president the way Paul Ryan has talked about President Obama, in such an accusatory manner about the way he is operating in the White House and trying to accomplish something, and then to accuse the president of sowing social unrest.
You know, but we've heard Eric Cantor, we've heard Boehner, but I have to say, I think we all need to toughen up. I mean, politics is a tough game. Let's do it for people, not just for money and power. Okay. But Franklin Roosevelt faced some pretty tough adversaries. Let's fight for the people. That's my...
And you are a fighter for the people.
Well, I just think we need some fairness in this country at long last, because we're seeing the statistics and we're seeing a new Gilded Age. And I think we don't want to revert in this country to the worst traits. And I see that in what Paul Ryan and some of his colleagues are saying.
Katrina, always a pleasure. Great to have you with us tonight. Remember to answer tonight's question there at the bottom of the screen and share your thoughts on Twitter @EdShow. We want to know what you think.